This week, Greg and Casey saw Hail Caesar, a film about a Hollywood fixer in the 1950s who works to keep the studio stars in line. This is getting 72 on Metacritic and is directed by the Coen brothers, starring Josh Brolin, George Clooney, Scarlett Johansson, Tilda Swinton, Frances McDormand, Channing Tatum, Jonah Hill, Allison Pill, and others. Fisher Stevens in this thing?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some surprising people just show up in little things.
Yeah,
Tiny things,
highly
yeah.
anticipated. Obviously, anytime the Coens release a film, it's a big deal for us.
Yep.
We're fans.
Absolutely.
So
They have made some of my absolute favorite. Their last
A
movie
number
is
of-
one of my favorite movies of all time.
yeah,
now.
they've made a number of my favorite movies of
Yeah.
all time.
So I'll leave you guys to it. How does it stand up? Let's get into it.
Sure.
All right.
What do you want to do here, bud?
Well, this is a complicated movie to talk about
It is.
because it's not very good.
Yeah. What's it got on Metacritic? 72.
72.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
about right.
I heard 72, and in my brain I was like 72, 57.
All right.
Oh man.
It looks amazing. It has some incredible moments of inspiration and fun and pure enjoyment. But it's got some real boring stretches of just like, why is this here? Why didn't we work a little bit more with this? And it doesn't. And this is a movie where I think if you had nailed a little harder down into a central storyline, which I know they don't really like to do.
Nor do I think that was the point of this movie.
No, but it
this
just
movie
needed
absolutely
one.
suffered from that.
Yeah. Now, I liked jumping away to all the vignettes, and I could have watched an entire movie of George Clooney starring in a 1950s Caesar film. I could have watched that all day long. Him,
co-starring Clancy Brown.
him and
by
Clancy
fucking
Brown in a fucking Roman period piece with all painted backdrops and stuff like that. I literally could have watched all day long. Anytime it went to that, I was wildly entertained.
Yeah.
I loved the movie, whatever movie Channing Tatum was filming. I would have watched that too. Because their love of them being cinephiles and loving film so much, those things are
loving
handled.
the golden age of film where
Yes.
there were these big lavish water sequences
Yeah,
and dance sequences
Yeah.
that were overtly homoerotic.
Yeah.
And gleefully homoerotic.
Totally.
And I think that scene specifically skirted that line really well.
Yeah.
Where the sort of Busby Berkeley aspects of the big flowery numbers were a little less well served in this movie than they were in something like The Big Lebowski.
Right. See, now that's where that kind of thing, where they can have a flourish of their love of that kind of film and that sort of storytelling and visual aspect really adds to a movie, because there's a movie. I mean, The Big Lebowski, it's like, as far as like using as a narrative of perfect storytelling or something, is pretty out there, because it's a very big, sprawling story that's pretty insane.
That doesn't tie itself up.
At all, but it has enough of a central character that you ride along with. Nothing against what Josh Brolin does in this movie; he's terrific in it. But
See, I disagree.
I think he's not the character that you should follow day to day. I think that him playing that character the way he is, he's doing a great, entertaining job. But it's not a character that has any form of depth or journey that you can go on.
I think that Josh Brolin was in a very different Coen Brothers movie than everybody else was.
Really?
Or rather, maybe everybody else was in. They were all in different Coen Brothers movies. This movie really felt like it had no through line whatsoever.
Yeah. Yet I
and-
wasn't entirely bored at any point.
No, I wasn't bored. I was just, there were moments where I was like, when Clooney is kidnapped,
Yeah.
and is it a spoiler to say who he's kidnapped?
No,
by?
because the story doesn't mean anything.
Again, much like a Coen Brothers movie. He's kidnapped by communists,
Right.
and basically they explain to him how communism works,
Right.
and why he should be a communist. There's elements of it that are absolutely charming, and
Yeah.
George Clooney in those moments was fucking great because
Yeah.
basically George Clooney sort of represents every man, I think, and how easily swayed the common man is, and for him to just be a dumb actor,
Yeah.
like he's just wandering around being an actor. He's like, now I'm an actor, now I'm in Rome, and he's acting, and he's like, oh, now I'm kidnapped by a communist, now I'm a communist.
Yeah.
His,
Yeah, I'll have another finger sandwich.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and the way he plays that is fucking
Yeah,
wonderful.
really great.
Because he's just a simple man who's like, okay,
Yeah.
and it's really great the way he plays that, and weirdly, no, it's pretty great, but. It also sort of just tells these stories like, well, this is what capitalism is like, and this is what communism does.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, yeah, but everybody knows that, and you're not using those things as plot points for an actual narrative.
No.
You're just throwing all of those things together in a movie and representing them in different ways and showing how they relate to the movie industry.
And it's not giving you a thing where you can like, oh, well, I'm going to pull the metaphor out of this because they're not giving you one.
It's not a metaphor. It's direct.
It's
These
very-
people are directly communists.
Yeah.
And they're directly against the capitalist system of the movie theater, of the movie industry.
Called
and,
Capital.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the press is represented by two women who are the exact same person. And,
Yeah.
And but with
Miss
slightly
Presley.
different self-awareness or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just everything, like all of the points they're making, it's just kind of like, well, yeah, okay, but so what?
Yeah, there is quite a bit of that. I could have watched Ray Fiennes try to direct a terrible actor all day long. I loved that sequence.
That sequence was great.
Really fun, and it had the kind of Coen's magic and comedy that I think is that of all the things they've been doing with their careers, which has been fantastic. The comedy has been the lesser represented now in the last little bit, whereas
Well,
it was
because it's been the less successful thing.
well, true enough, but still, it used to follow a fairly signature pattern from the Coens, where you'd get drama, comedy,
Right.
and you just back and forth with that. And yeah, sometimes it's the Hudsucker Proxy, and people don't get it, which is a fucking bummer.
Because
That's
that's a great
it's a
movie.
fucking brilliant movie. It's their most underappreciated film by
Definitely.
far. I goddamn love the Hudsucker Proxy.
Yeah.
But films like Raising Arizona is one of the best comedies I've ever seen, and I just watched it again a little while ago. It still holds up like a motherfucker. It's so great.
It's weird because I usually find that their comedies often are the ones that have even more to them. Like,
Well, 'cause
like,
they
or
lean-
the movies
but
that
the thing
They
is-
they
yeah.
lean more into the Coens' left turn in their
Yeah.
comedies than anything else. They
like
fucking
Oh
pedal
Brother
to the
Where
metal
Art
with that
Thou,
shit.
and
Yeah.
even Inside Llewyn Davis, which at times is it's I wouldn't call that movie a comedy, but it's also
Yeah.
not like
But it's very funny.
It's not it's very funny, and it's not like No Country for Old Men, which is not a comedy. You know what I mean?
That's the thing.
It's
Inside
the movies
Llewyn
that they do
Davis-
that kind of both are the movies that I usually find are the ones that have like a deeper thing to pull from.
Yeah, and are more relatable. This movie's
Yeah.
not relatable or anything.
No.
Because at the end of the day, I didn't care.
No, and if it was going to be if it wasn't detailed enough or focused enough to be a tribute to cinema, and it also didn't pay enough attention to these things for it to be any kind of satire. Although it skirts, it presents itself as satire more than anything.
yeah, it
But it
keeps
isn't-
slapping you in the face and telling you it's a satire.
Yeah, but it
Doesn't
isn't
feel like it.
It isn't really. Yeah, it's not invested enough in the ideas to be a real satire.
And there was a lot of stuff in it that I was just like, well, first of all, the direction. My biggest problem with this movie is how lifelessly it's directed. It feels like they're just trying to get shots of the actors without setting anything up beautifully like they normally do until
Yeah.
they have a
And they
big
got
water
Deacons
number.
back on for this one.
Yeah, which I didn't see any of what I love about him.
Oh man, Deakins shot a horror movie that was at Midnight Madness called The Girl in the Photograph. That if you hadn't have told me it was Deakins, I would have everyone was going around saying like, Deakins returned to horror, and I was like, this movie's garbage and it doesn't look that great. If you had told me it was just some whoever that liked Deakins, I would have been like, "Oh, it's an okay approximation."
Yeah.
But, fuck, man. I feel like he's definitely able to go on some autopilot.
Yeah.
And I really felt like that here. Like I felt like this movie wasn't as striking as it could have been.
No. Listen, but all this being said, I enjoyed myself.
I can't say I did.
I enjoyed myself in the sense that I haven't been out to the movies in a while.
Yeah.
Particularly with my wife, which was great.
Athena was telling me before we recorded, she was like, because this was your first sort of foray out into the world without the baby.
Without the
you
baby.
left her on the
Just
kitchen floor.
yeah. Just left her in the inside.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh, in the inside.
Yeah.
Oh, there's lots of people there. She'll be
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. A lot of flat surfaces you can put a baby.
I thought you said incinerator.
Yeah.
I was like, we won't be home to turn on the heat,
Yeah.
so nothing will happen.
Yeah, so I was wondering, I was like, so she's like, so we actually got to go out and see a movie.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, I was like, I wonder if that's going to affect your enjoyment of the movie.
It did, because I was just like, I'm out at the movies, and that's nice, and I'm out with my wife, and that's really nice. And I was really tired, and it was hard to stay awake. So the thing is with the Coen Brothers movie is when it's the Coens, you want that extra bit more because they're better at it than everybody.
Yeah.
So when it's not the best, it's a total bummer. And I got a vibe from the movie early on. I'm like, oh, okay, I gotta either this is somewhere in between. It's probably not going to be as disappointing as Lady Killers, or going to feel as awkward or un-Coens like as Intolerable Cruelty, but we're not going to get quite even to a Burn After Reading level, probably, which I also think is an underrated movie. It's pretty funny.
Well, yeah, but Burn After Reading, see, the difference here is Burn After Reading has an energy to it.
Exactly.
There's life in that movie that is slightly different. It feels like a movie that they made and shot in a weekend.
Yeah.
Which is something that they started out their careers as kids with a Super 8 camera doing.
For sure.
And it felt like a little love letter to having done that.
Absolutely.
This movie felt like that, but without any of the energy. It felt like an obligation, and it felt like nobody was trying at all.
Yeah. That being said, if I didn't know this, I never
You didn't know it was a Coen Brothers.
Yeah, I would have been like, I don't know if this movie hit what it wanted to hit, but it certainly entertained the fuck out of me a lot of times. And if this was somebody's first movie, I'd be like, I really want to know where you're gonna go.
Yeah.
So it's the Coen Brothers, and there's a history of the best movies ever made by people.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to kind of judge it other than that. But just being out at the movies and something that was kind of a spectacle to look at from moment to moment had enough ups for me that I enjoyed myself out in the theater watching it.
Yeah.
Will I watch it again? Probably not. I don't know if it's on Netflix. I don't know if I'd put it on Netflix and just scan through. But yeah, I just got cable again. So if it turns up on cable, on like a Superstation or some shit like that, I might watch a segment or two and be like, yeah, you know what, that's great.
Yeah,
I want to see this Channing Tatum dance number again.
If it turns up on cable, just shows up in front of me at some point, I will turn it off and watch Llewyn Davis. That's the crazy thing. Is that this, other than Lady Killers, is probably my least favorite Coen Brothers movie
it's
today,
definitely on the low end
which
there.
I don't count. For some reason, I feel okay to not count movies like Lady Killers and Intolerable Cruelty.
Right.
Intolerable Cruelty, obviously, because it's not. It was a Brian Grazer movie.
Right.
He was like, hey, can you guys
I
do this?
do not count it at all.
No, I don't think anybody does.
No.
Um,
And Lady Killers is just like, we all just pretend it didn't happen.
yeah. I think everybody's just fine to kind of go.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks included. Everyone's just trying to go like,
man, and all that leading up to that, I was like, oh, Tom Hanks and
Tom
a fucking
Hanks in a
Coen
Coen
Brothers
Brothers
movie,
movie.
did perfect.
But that movie perfectly exemplified why that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
But all that aside, this movie I do count as a Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah.
Because there's
It's
redeeming
very
stuff
Coen-y
in
parts.
But I think it's definitely my least favorite.
Yeah.
Whereas their last movie might be my favorite
Sure.
of theirs.
Yeah, picking a favorite for them is not.
It's a dumb thing to do.
Don't do it.
But it's a movie that still sticks with me today.
Yeah.
So, who knows? They're not losing a step.
No.
Yeah.
But I would love
of
a rich, creative, thoughtful comedy out of them again.
Well,
It doesn't even have to be
hoping for-
thoughtful.
No, I just wanted some energy.
Yeah.
the amount of
Their sense of humor is very particular and rare, and I would like to see another film that really shows it off well.
I feel like they've made enough like really great movies that they still have like 5 more duds in them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Before we get
they
to,
would
like,
have
hey,
to make
guys.
like 15 in a row of the worst movies ever made for their record to truly be tarnished at this point, you know?
Yeah.
And they'll never mar movies like A Serious Man or Fargo or Miller's Crossing for me. Those movies will always be
They'll
perfect.
always be fucking perfect. Barton Fink, you know.
Yeah.
And they like making movies about making movies, and this,
Yeah.
you know, when you got Barton Fink already in your...
Yeah.
Yeah, when you've already done Barton Fink, why do Hail Caesar?
This has been a presentation of the Modern Superior Media Network.